America remains the most powerful country on earth, but does it face existential threats to the very identity of who she is?
Sure, if we embrace socialism or if we allow external elements like radical Islamic terrorists and such to disrupt our societies.
America is founded on an idea. What is that idea all about?
It raises the question about what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have an order, a political order that's designed to allow for the fulfillment of the human soul and liberty?
And can the nation go back to its original design?
It's not about going back to the 18th century. It's not about getting rid of technology and changing our lives. It's not going back at all. It's about looking up.
And do you think America can achieve a true liberty without faith?
That's a great question. I think individuals can adhere to liberty without faith, but I think for America, for the American government experience to really work, it has to be grounded on eternal truths that emanate almost always from faith traditions.
The Liberty Bell, which is the iconic figure of American history, of the founding of America, has one verse on it, one statement, and it's from the Bible. You shall proclaim liberty throughout your land to all its inhabitants.
Merry Christmas, everyone! Today, I will continue my Liberty Talk with Matthew Spaulding, Vice President of Hillsdale College's Washington Operations and Dean of the Van Andel Graduate School of Government. We talked about the philosophical and theological origin of the concept of liberty, among others. Enjoy! Can you explain the philosophical and theological origin of the concept of freedom?
Well, that's a very large question. But the way I put it in my panel this morning, and I think the key thing to it is oftentimes we speak of freedom or liberty as a thing in and of itself, but it's really what's the grounding behind it that really gives it life. And the argument really of the Western tradition, going back to the Greeks and the Romans, and eventually up to and including the American founding, was that the development of liberty is based on assumption of what man is, or what it means to be human, grounded in in nature. Whether you understand that nature to be a theological creation, and we are endowed by our Creator, as it says in the Declaration of Independence, or if you understand that in a philosophical sense, that we have a nature, and the nature of being human is different from the nature of being an animal or being a table, right? And that puts you on this other road to, well, what does it require to fulfill that nature, to be fully human? And a crucial aspect of that is freedom. Freedom of being able to do things, to choose one's life, but also, crucially, to have freedom of the higher expressions, whether it's intellectual freedom in the academic sense, or especially religious freedom to pursue an understanding of the highest and most important things. But even in the general sense that I think we must understand it, what we must have for it to be truly liberty at all is a sense of the transcendence. That there is something, setting aside for a moment what it might be, but there's something larger than us. There's something outside of us. There's something that is more perfect than us. And if you have that, that has the effect of kind of moderating your individual passions and your sense of it's all about me. And that I think that's the beginning of the journey, if you will. The fulfillment of that then takes you down that path, I think, towards higher understandings of what revealed religion tells us.
Okay. So do you think we can achieve true liberty or freedom without faith?
No, I don't think you can. I think the question is how much and to what specificity do we need it? But even at the most basic sense, for instance, if you take the Declaration of Independence, you can read that as a very theological document. We are all, we are created equal. Man is endowed with rights. It speaks of divine providence, but you can also read it in a very general sense of a kind of a creator theological understanding that's not specifically, say, Christian.
Natural law kind of concept.
Yeah, kind of a natural law, natural theology. But my point is, you really can't read that document and get liberty out of it in any meaningful sense without having a basic semblance of what we would call faith. Right? There is a God. There is something outside of us, greater than us, that transcends us. And if you don't have that, not only do you have the possibility of, well, it's kind of man versus man and force, but it's also just you. It's very disheartening, but also it's not conducive to fulfilling what I think, even in just a natural sense, what it means to be human. You're not complete, and it's a very small, a very selfish notion of freedom and liberty, which I don't think was at all the idea of liberty intended as it's developed over all these thousands of years back to the Greeks and the Romans. It really loses its content. Now, what that faith might specifically require, or what it might mean, or the details of its content, that's actually left not to the political realm. This is the way in which the separation of church and state is actually a good concept. It kind of creates the framework by which we have to recognize that general sense of faith. But then the particulars of that are left to you and your church and your faith, and the job of government and politics is merely to protect that, but also to see it flourish. And in that sense, it's extremely friendly, especially to Christianity, which is so much drawn towards every individual. Everyone is equal in the eyes of God, and everyone has the same hopes and opportunities and fulfillment of their faith.
So equality, this concept also comes from faith, right? Everybody is created equal. Everybody is made in the image of God.
Well, there's the idea of equality, which of course is at the center of kind of the American idea, is a debated concept. It has been historically. And one way to look at it is we are equal in the very small sense, right, a technical sense. But I think the way it was meant as it really developed more fully is we are equal in the sense that we are humans, but that means something. It doesn't mean we're just kind of like chairs at a table, because it means something to be human. And the growth of this idea of equality is really fueled by the rise of Christianity in history. Because Christianity is the religion that comes along and says, no, religion isn't about this people or this race or this country. It's about everyone. And you are all equally children of God. And you are all equally, it's equal for all of you to come into the kingdom, right? So Christianity really fuels this greater understanding of Christianity. And I think America, shaped largely by Christianity, but also by you have this tradition of the British rule of law and a philosophical tradition. It kind of comes together into the way the American founders understood it in, say, the Declaration and in general, which is that what they meant by equality was this fuller sense of you're equally human, you equally have your right to your life, your liberty, which they didn't think meant kind of doing whatever you want. It meant human liberty and the pursuit of happiness, which of course doesn't mean anything you want to do. It means you should pursue happiness, which of course is a great classical term for fulfillment in an intellectual and moral sense.
Yes, that's different from happiness, just like a human desire. That's my happiness.
Exactly, right? Today, of course, that's what pursuit of happiness means I can do whatever I want.
Yeah. So
But no, that's not what they meant. They meant happiness in a larger sense, but also the pursuit of, which to say, you have a right to happiness, but you have a right to pursue it, which is a lifelong, journey, in the sense that we're pilgrims to happiness.
Okay. Do you think there's a existential threat to the founding principles of America? I mean, threat to what makes America America?
No, there is. There definitely is. It's been developing for some time, and the threat here is not. Well, let me use a quote. Abraham Lincoln, in one of his early famous speeches, said that no other country will defeat us. No country in Europe could come here and take a drink out of the Mississippi. That's not how it's going to happen. If we're going to die, Lincoln said, we will die by suicide. Which is, there's something about the kind of a democratic republic in that sense, that our continued existence, our continued survival depends upon what we believe. And if we come to the point where we no longer believe these truths and we don't live by them, then yes, we will decline, and this great nation will be something less that might exist, but it won't be the same thing. And so the threat here is an intellectual, moral threat. More and more, a deeper understanding of our ideas has been replaced by a sense of relativism, that there's no truth, it's merely relative, what you think, what I think, and historicism, that ideas are what we think today and what they think in the past, well, those are old ideas, and we don't need to believe those anymore. I mean, the modern academy, the modern culture, and the media have really eaten away at these ideas, to the point where if you think if we as a culture believe the Constitution, that's always debated, that's not important. But the real problem is if it goes behind that, to say that the idea that there are things we can know, like all men are created equal, or if we can't know those fundamental things, then it's like losing the wheels on your car. It just you can't. You're in a extremely dangerous spot as a political culture, but also as a society.
Right, because America is founded upon an idea. If that idea is no longer believed, and then this country is gone, basically.
Well, but also if the idea becomes something else.
Yeah.
So I believe that there's a kind of a natural yearning in the human soul to know the truth of things.
Yeah.
But more and more that's suppressed, or the academy doesn't teach that, or our culture doesn't uphold that. People look elsewhere.
Yeah.
And they look to pop culture, they look to some cause, whatever it might be.
So do you think fundamentally the founding principles of this country facilitate the human being's ultimate purpose?
There's on the one hand, we can say we love America because of its particular thing, or I'm from here, I live here. But what's really great about it is the sense in which it transcends history. It makes a claim that these things are true, They were true in 1776, they're true at the Civil War, they're true today. Either that's true or it's not. If it's not true, then where are we? It wasn't true before either. But if it is true, it's not merely historically true. It raises the question about what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to have an order, a political order that's designed to allow for the fulfillment of the human soul and liberty. I think those truths are still true today as much as they were then. And the question is, how do we revive and rekindle all of that?
Can America, today's American people, still go back to the path that our founding fathers have set forth?
Well, I think that, I think the answer is yes, but it's not going back is my point, okay. Right? And because when we say go back, people mean historically going back. Well, no, that's not what we mean. It's not about going back to the 18th century. It's not going about getting rid of technology and changing our lives. It's not going back at all. It's about looking up, right? I mean, if there's a natural sense of in the human soul to know those things, which means to rule ourselves, to self-govern, to make our own decisions about the most important things. If that is true, which I think it is true, and I think the founders were right about that because it was true a long time before they wrote about them, then there's always a possibility of recovery. And the question is, where do you go, or what taps into that? It oftentimes is a political debate or debates over a particular thing, but also something that also revives a religious sense, in a sense of an awakening. There might be events that shape that, but those things I think are always possible. And in a time of turmoil, which we have today, right? Things are getting more difficult. The battles are getting more intense and more divisive. That I actually would argue is, oddly enough, a fertile ground for having a serious recovery of the most important ideas.
I want to know about that later, but today we probably don't have time.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being with you.
That's it for today. I hope you enjoy Zooming In's Christmas special and have a great rest of the holiday with your family and loved ones. I will see you very soon.